Welcome to Global Conversations, round 4. We are so delighted today to be interviewing Nikki Estes, who is the presenting and touring director at South Arts. So Nikki, before we talk about you, which I'm dying to do, I think a lot of folks really don't understand what it is that South Arts does. And I'd love to get a better sense from you about the range of services you offer and also, frankly, who you serve. I'm not even sure what y'all consider the South and sort of your territory.
Of course. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, and hello, everyone. So South Arts is a regional arts organization. There are several of us in the U.S., and we work in 9 southeastern states and beyond. Our mission is to advance Southern vitality through the arts, and our core focus is to support arts organizations and artists in our 9-state region, which includes Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, the Carolinas, and Tennessee. We do quite a lot. We have a touring film series that takes independent films and filmmakers around the South. We have a national jazz program. We have many grant programs. We also have a program that supports the sustainability of arts organizations. We help to organize conferences and convenings. So we have our hands in a lot of things.
Yeah. And how long has South Arts been going?
Many years. So we were, I believe, 93 was when South Arts was created.
And how's your mission evolved during that time?
Well, interestingly, we just completed a few years ago a new strategic plan, and a lot of our new work is centered around being very strategic and focused on directly supporting artists and arts organizations in our region. And so I think with this new work that we're doing, we're just being more intentional, designing programs to help our artists live and thrive in the South, to stay in the South and not move away. So that's really what we're focused on, supporting the infrastructure of Southern artists and arts organizations, and to really shine a light and celebrate their excellence.
So before we started recording, we were talking about how important your mission is, because particularly with the death of local newspapers, there's half as many as there were 20 years ago. And the first thing that gets cut is arts reporting. So it's still going on, but it's not going on in the mainstream. And, with the rise of the internet, so much of the focus is on the big urban centers, not that Atlanta isn't a big center. So I find it really exciting that not only are you uplifting voices that the public might not see, but you're also encouraging folks to stay in place and continue to create in their communities, which obviously is going to enrich them. Has the pandemic helped that in some ways? Because I do know of a number of choreographers, friends of DDP, that have moved back home and are really evaluating if they have to be in New York or, Chicago, wherever.
I'm not aware of any big trend that's happening now. I do feel like the South is being more recognized before. As I mentioned before, we know that many artists move away to cities that they may feel are more viable. And we really wanted to change this. And so we changed this with our grant making. We moved from supporting a much broader choice of artists to solely focusing on artists based in the South. And this was a big change for us as an organization and for grantees. But like I mentioned, we wanted to be more intentional about supporting the artistic growth of Southern artists so that they could stay here. I think that, there is an issue that many presenting organizations that I work with only know well-established dance companies that have been around for many years, and generally local or regional, small or new emerging companies may be lesser known. And there's also this misconception about the South in general that good art doesn't live here, that you have to go to California or New York or Chicago. And we're actively trying to change that. So while I haven't seen a big movement, you know, we hear things here and there about companies relocating. And so we'd love to see more companies come here. And the companies that are in the South, we want to help them in the way that we can.
This 9-state region that you focus on, it's so different. I mean, it's not like the South is a single culture, right? So it's got to be very interesting for you. I mean, you've got a lot of rural populations. You have, you know, Atlanta, which is a huge, you know, city center. And it must be interesting balancing, you know, where you focus and what you bring to these presenting organizations. Talk a little bit about your background, and then I'd love to move on to a little bit more, some of the more dance specific things that South Arts is involved in.
Okay, well, I'm not a dancer, but I've always been in the arts. I studied arts in undergrad and graduate school. I began my career in the arts at a contemporary arts center in Atlanta. I then moved to the City of Atlanta, Office of Cultural Affairs, working with the city music festivals and youth programming, and I transitioned into a Grants Supervisor there. I also volunteered many years ago at an organization that helped build life skills for youth through dance. And I transitioned to South Arts. I've been at South Arts for over 17 years now.
Wow.
A long time. And it was a very different experience. I went from a city entity that supported all disciplines to a regional arts organization that mainly focused on performing arts at that time. Yep. A lot of learning in the performing arts field happened in the early years of South Arts. And, you know, my involvement in the dance field is really from my own personal interest in dance. The work that I'm doing gives me the opportunity to learn more about dance and explore dance in new ways. And my work really gave me an opportunity to learn more about the needs of the field and to help explore how South Arts can meet those needs.
That's great. It sounds like you've got a very demanding but also kind of fun job, because you're not ever doing it sounds as though you're not ever doing exactly the same thing every day.
That's right. And particularly these days.
Yeah, I bet. So let's talk a little bit about Momentum and the dance touring initiative. Can you tell, you know, most of the folks that follow us are interested in, I'm hoping someday starting their own company, and we like to focus on the skills that are required to manage a company, how to grow and flourish. And it sounds like you're really involved in making that happen.
Sure. Well, years ago, South Arts decided that we wanted to be more strategic with our grant dollars. And so we took a look at our region and noticed that there wasn't much modern dance or contemporary ballet being presented in our region. We have a long history of grant making in the presenting and touring field, but we wanted to do some, you know, more meaningful work with our grants. And we know that some artistic disciplines require more support and resources than other disciplines might. And so we had a lot of conversation in the dance field with leaders in the field, with artists, with presenters about the needs related to dance presenting. And we knew that we wanted to do more than provide a grant to engage a dance company. So we created the Dance Touring Initiative over 10 years ago, and we now have 25 Southern presenters in the network. And in essence, we wanted to see more modern dance and contemporary ballet in the South, but we recognize that there are challenges. So this initiative included professional development, travel to dance festivals such as Jacob's Pillow and the American Dance Festival, direct connection to artists, and encouraging more collaboration between artists and presenters. Of course, the program included funds to present and engage companies. And a few years ago, we noticed that no Southern companies were being presented by this network of presenters, although they were occasionally discussed. And so we've had lots of conversation about why is that? What's happening here? So about 1.5 years ago, we launched Momentum, which is modeled after the Dance Touring Initiative in many ways. We selected 5 Southern dance companies and we'll work with these companies over a 3-year period. So what we try to do with both Momentum and the Dance Touring Initiative is we noticed a gap or identified a need and we're trying to fill it. So like the Dance Initiative, Momentum includes professional development and resources, connection to presenters, funding to be presented. Pre-COVID, it supported travel to conferences and time and space with a presenter partner and a mentor. And all of this really supports a learning community among participants. So, of course, because of the pandemic, we're having to rethink and reimagine many of the initial components. But much of my work, particularly now, is really just to listen and to learn as a funder how we can be more of a partner, hearing challenges, hearing what's working, and trying to be a resource and connector to resources. So, ultimately, what we want to ensure is that modern and contemporary dance is a viable option in our region for artists as well as presenters.
It's just so impressive because it so many iterations beyond the typical just hand out some money and hope for the best. It really sounds like a very, folks say this a lot, but it really does sound extremely holistic, that it's, you've really done a lot of thinking and listening about what the actual problem is, what your artists are telling you. And then it's not a one-off. I mean, it's a 3-year commitment. And the mentoring aspect, the connection with the presenters, it sounds fantastic. Have you seen some successes coming out of it?
Well, we had a lot of goals set before the pandemic, and going into really within the first year the pandemic hit. And so what is interesting about the work that's happening in Momentum now is even from the beginning, these companies questioned the traditional touring model and really wanted to challenge it and create a new model. And I think now, because of the pandemic, it has become, pretty clear that this has to happen. And what I love is that these companies, I want them to feel like they have a voice and the autonomy to make this change. And I think that it is going to happen because I don't see what else could happen in the world of presenting and touring than the way it was before and really not going back. So I think innovation is definitely going to be a byproduct of this pandemic. But what's great about these companies is they're all very different and they're coming together to solve their problems and share resources. And that's really what we want to see.
That's fantastic, because so much of what I see in the arts grants funding world is, as I said, the one-off or the here's your grant and go off. And everybody's in their own little silo. Everybody's trying to figure things out on their own. Nobody feels empowered or that it's appropriate to ask for help or to turn to each other and say, have you found this and what are you saying? Obviously, we're going to post about Momentum and the Dance Touring Initiative up on our website. And we could not agree with you more about the traditional touring model. It's gotten more and more expensive, but something does need to sort of come up to replace it, because first of all, a lot of great work isn't being seen, but also a lot of these communities are not getting the opportunity. I still do want to come back a little bit more to you, but I want to talk some about, in case somebody is interested in applying, what are the steps that you would go through when deciding or not whether to support an artist or a company or involve them in a grant making consideration?
Sure. Well, it depends on the program and the way it's structured. So right now, outside of special initiatives like Momentum, we typically do not directly fund individual artists. However, our grant funds directly support artist fees of individual artists and companies. So an organization applies to South Arts to present a dance company, for example, and our funds directly support that artist fee. These applications are reviewed by a panel. And in this case, high quality work samples like video are critical. We also value community engagement, so projects that are thoughtful and well planned, that engage the community, are important to us. And what we don't want to see are really cookie cutter activities or checking the box, you know, because it's a requirement for our grant. We notice as an organization and also the panel. And so we want to get a sense that there has been planning between the organization and the artist, and that it all makes sense, and that the intended audience is going to walk away from that experience with something.
Yeah, that's excellent, and it's also really well thought out. I mean, I've been hearing about some issues around, for example, peak performances and, you know, misalignment of expectations and treatment of the artist, et cetera, et cetera. So it seems to me that you're providing a critical role, really making transparent and nailing down what expectations are and, you know, what you want to see coming out of this.
As a regional organization, we also want to make sure that there is a geographic distribution across our region for funds, and we are particularly interested in reaching rural communities. So that is always something we're thinking about. For a program like Momentum, which is also the selection process was an adjudicated process, but we looked at different things. So we looked at capacity and artistic vision and the company's goals, and we selected a cohort of companies that varied in size and aesthetic, for example, so that our presenters would have a good mix of choices when presenting funds became available. So in short, you know, the evaluation criteria and the priorities that we may have and expectations that we may have vary based on the program and what we're trying to achieve. Obviously, with a program like Momentum, which is over 3 years, is very different than providing a presenting grant to an organization where we have very little touch. You know, you tell us what you're going to do, and here's the fee, and we trust that you're going to do it. It's very different than working more collaboratively with companies.
This is not one of my written down questions, but this happens because then I get interested. Talk a little bit about what your presenting organizations look like. I'm sure they vary in size, they vary geographically, they vary in terms of audience.
It is across the board, and which is exciting. So we have traditional presenters like performing arts centers, and we have colleges and universities or libraries or community centers. And what we've been trying to work harder at is helping our region understand that we're not looking for a traditional presenter that fits in a box. So it's not only the performing arts centers, but it may be a community organization that, you know, doesn't have a presenting season, but does do some presenting. They may not define it as presenting, but that really is what they're doing. They're engaging an artist in their community. So we are just trying to make sure that our region and others really understand that we are open to non-traditional presenters and really want to see more of that.
That's fantastic. I worked for years with the Chicago Park District, and a lot of people don't know that, you know, beautiful WPA murals, full stages, orchestra pits, and a lot of these, you know, people don't think of, for example, the Chicago Park District as a major presenter, but they are. And there's these beautiful buildings which are underutilized, and in another life, Mayor Lori has lots of other things to worry about, but it would be so great to activate all those spaces. And I love the idea of, you know, a community center or a library becoming a presenting arts organization. Why not, right?
And maybe because of the pandemic, what I imagine we would see more outdoor presenting and work being presented outdoors. And so maybe in the past, people may not have thought of a park as a presenter, but I would hope that that might be something that people are thinking about more now.
Yeah, that's a great point. So are there things that frustrate you about the arts industry?
Of course. And a lot of this, focuses around what our renewed mission is, and trying to increase the spotlight on the South, not only in our own work, but through perhaps nominations or suggestions to others. And really what we're just trying to do is we want to make sure that Southern artists and the South are being considered for opportunities. National funders are beginning to notice the gap in funding, and some have noted that Southern artists are often not on the list of grantees. So it's really exciting to see more funders recognize this need and, look outside the typical centers for dance. But it has been that is sometimes frustrating when you don't see any Southern artists on the list of, grantees or awards. I would also say that when you look at other art forms, such as music, for example, there is so much representation, and there just seems to be very little dance in comparison. We know that dance is expensive for artists to make, for presenters to show. We know that audience development and community engagement are challenges for many Southern communities. I hear all the time that other art forms are may have less risk or more return on investment, and this is frustrating. And it also appears that the dance community is really going to be the hardest hit by this pandemic. There's physical touch in dance. There are limited open, performance spaces. Digital or virtual work may not be effective, feasible, or desired by many companies. So I do worry about sustainability. We know that many of these organizations depend on earned revenue generated from classes and workshops that aren't happening now. And, I do believe when the performing arts centers and spaces reopen, it will take more time for dancers to return to performance stages because, many of them aren't able to rehearse right now. And so getting dancers conditioned to perform again will take time. And then, I've already mentioned that the traditional touring model has issues. It was broken. It's been broken for a while, way before the pandemic. But my hope is that we will see some new models come out of this where we are right now in the world, and that's exciting.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. I think dance is uniquely expensive and also uniquely vulnerable. So how can we as an industry, dance industry, performing arts industry, better market dance to a more inclusive audience? Now, I guess I'm throwing back at you some of the problems that you've identified. Shape it to be more sustainable and more equitable.
I wish I had a great answer. I mean, I will say that marketing dance is a big challenge in our region. It's something that we are trying to address in Momentum and the Dance Touring Initiative. I think because of the pandemic, I do believe that, we've seen through virtual presentations that organizations have been able to reach broader, wider, more diverse audiences than they have before. And my hope is that they will glean lessons from this and determine ways to continue this forward movement. As I mentioned, I also think that new models will be created. Innovation is happening, because of what we're experiencing, not only in the pandemic, but also because of the call for social justice. I believe that there will be more resources for organizations in areas that have been historically overlooked and under-resourced now. And I do think that organizations will be more resilient because of all this happening. And I feel that there's a lot of work, including the work that's happening at South Arts, that organizations are going through right now to address equity. One of our priorities right now is looking at diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in our work. We're spending a lot of time on how we can ensure that this equity work is an integral part of our programming and our operations. And I feel like many organizations are doing this work. So I feel like real change is going to happen when it comes to addressing audiences or sustainability, or even more inclusive communities.
Yeah, and I think the more we see Black and brown dancers in the classical form, the more engagement there'll be. I mean, why would somebody be interested if the folks on stage don't look anything like them? And it's a very specific movement vocabulary, and a lot of the wording is in French, et cetera, et cetera. How and why does this affect me? But I think that work is critical. I'm going to close by asking, sort of on a hopeful note, you've told us so much of really well thought out programming, specifically addressing problems that exist now, but you're also looking out into the future, which I think is so critical. Anything exciting on the horizon for South Arts you want to tell us about?
Well, I think we're going to have lots of exciting things, some of which I can talk about today, but I will say stay tuned, because
Okay.
our hoping to offer new funding opportunities soon, and we are looking to expand our work and connect to organizations that we haven't worked with in the past. So that's exciting, and stay tuned for that. But we are about to open up a couple of grant programs that I think the field and field will be particularly interested in, I hope. Our cross-sector impact grants is about to open soon, and it is a grant program that encourages partnerships between the arts and non-arts sectors. Grants up to $15,000 support projects that include partnerships that address arts and equity, for example, or arts and climate change. Last year, we supported a dance company that engaged the military. I believe that program will launch in the next couple of weeks. We also are about to open our individual career opportunity grant program. And right now, this is really the only grant program that directly supports the professional development of individual artists. Last year, we supported a choreographer's travel expenses to perform in another country, for example. So these are grants up to $2,000. It's a really small program right now, but I think we're hoping to have it grow over the years. And I've touched on this a little bit, but want to mention it, that we encourage collaboration between artists and presenters. And something that grew out of our dance training initiative work is this artist planning visit grant. So we have a grant that supports the travel expenses to have an artist come to your community. And it's an opportunity for a presenting organization to learn more about the artist's work and their capacity, for the artist to learn more about the organization and their community, their needs. And through that exchange and learning, that they sit down together and plan the residency activities so that it is really customized to the community and to the artist capacity. So we have grant funds available for that, and we think they're important, and hope to see more organizations utilize that when travel is, becomes more part of what we can do. So I would say, dance makers should definitely look out for those grant programs to open soon.
This is all so well thought out, and I love how collaborative it is, but also it's at every level. And you're not just, you're looking at it from the presenter side, from the artist side, from the interface, collaborative, lots of opportunities to engage, which is really exciting. We have on DDP's website, and this was a direct result of my also doing some listening and talking to female choreographers, that they missed a lot of deadlines because they're constantly running. If they have kids, trying to take care of their kids, or sometimes elder care, they're missing deadlines. They don't know if they apply for a grant, if they'll get it, or if they're even eligible. So we've basically taken a spreadsheet, organized it all, and then we run a banner headline on our homepage, letting people know about upcoming deadlines so that they can see if, say, oh, wow, that's coming up. I wonder if I should apply. So we'd love to get all that information from you. More information in depth about, the dance touring initiative, momentum, some of these possibilities we'll absolutely put up on the website. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much. What a pleasure. I've learned a huge amount, which is always the best part of these. And congratulations for the work that you and South Arts in general is doing.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share more.
Absolutely. And thanks for taking the time. I can only imagine how busy you are during these times. All right. Thank you so much, Nikki Estes. We are so looking forward to seeing everything that you and your organization are going to be doing in the next couple of years, hopefully when we get back to touring, presenting, and in-person performances. Thank you.
Thank you for all that you do also for the field. Take care.